Welcome to A Delhi Love, Ishq Mohabbat Pyar, the podcast that treats Delhiwalas to captivating conversations on living and loving all things Delhi. Delhi is not just a place, it's a state of mind, an attitude that leaves a mark on everyone who visits or calls it home. I'm Yasmin, your host, a documentary filmmaker, former municipal councillor, and at heart, the quintessential Delhi girl. I love how Delhi is both old and new at the same time. I value its history and heritage and love exploring the new aspects of the city we share. I'm no expert, but I grew up in the gullies here, enjoyed public service here, and just like you, shared a deep passion for Delhi's enigmatic soul. Together, let's embrace the delightful contradictions that make Delhi the city it is. After all, around every corner, there must be 1,000 dastans to share in this megacity of a million conversations. While Mumbai is known as the city of dreams, with the stock market, film industry and work opportunities for all, Delhi, I believe, is the city of the entrepreneur. Over the centuries, the city's access to power has created opportunities that dreamers have been able to leverage. At the same time, the city has always offered work and a roof to people from everywhere. For those who came seeking refuge, survival drove their entrepreneurial spirit and dreams. It is from Delhi that you hear stories of courage and resilience, of embracing the chaos of possibility. Today, we are meeting one such entrepreneur, Ajay Jain, who is known to many Delhiites as the KUNZUM guy. But what many may not know is that Ajay is an MBA and mechanical engineer, the typical Delhi parent's dream boy. But then, Ajay switched careers, defied many a convention, and reinvented himself at least twice, while creating a next-gen Delhi adda for people who like coffee, conversations, and company.
There's a new school of thought now which says die with zero. I can sit in a boardroom and run businesses even at 70, but I can't drive from here to Arunachal by road when I'm 70. I said it's the most stunning spot I've ever stood on in my life. It was over 14,000 feet above sea level and pristine, clear skies, just mountain peaks around me, cold, windy. So in that moment, when I saw the signboard to Kaza, I found my direction to where I was headed for that day. But I also found my direction in life that I really want to discover India for myself. People don't realize the yellow metro line, which goes from Gurgaon to Delhi University, it's 1,000 years of history on that one line. Reading and books are the antidote to propaganda. When more and more of us are reading, right, it's good for business, of course, but it's also good for us as a society.
Hi Ajay.
Hi Yasmin.
To Delhi Love, Ishq Mohabbat Pyar. So the show is about Delhi, its people, all the things we love. People who've had interesting journeys in the city. So we're talking to a whole bunch of people, and I thought we must definitely have you. I've known you a long time, and you've had exciting, even brave journey from where I kind of see it. You've switched lanes so many times. You've studied first was an engineer, then you did an MBA, then you studied journalism and switched lanes and careers many times.
Yeah,
am I right?
So in between there were like a few changes. So I would say really,
it's not been linear for you at all.
It's not been linear, and it's been like living many lives in one life. In a way. Yeah. So initially, actually, it started with, I realized after some time, it was like Jawaharlal Nehru's 5-year plans, because every 5 years I was totally changing plans and a totally different direction altogether.
That worked well for India. So I'm sure it's working well. But you actually went to study journalism at 31.
That's right. Yeah. I was, at that time, it seemed like middle age, and now it seems like very youthful.
Now, I also feel in retrospect that we put all these pressures on ourselves that we have to do this and we have to do this. I think the millennials are much better, but you broke, I think at that time, it was really unheard of when you, had to give up everything. And, it would have been a hard sell to family. And of course, I don't know whether friends had an opinion, but definitely family, you were married, you had children by then, there were responsibilities. So how difficult was it to convince the family that, okay, now I'm leaving the job and I'm going out to study?
So there's a little secret to this. Okay. You can be perfectly normal from inside, but build a demeanor that people say, oh, he's like that.
Okay.
Like he's a little kind of, off the beaten track, right? When you build that demeanor, they start accepting that whatever you do unconventional, they say it's all right because he's like that. And basically you're putting up that show for them. Yeah. And that becomes easier. And they say, okay, let him do whatever he wants to.
No, like how? Like looking at you, I would say that you look perfectly normal.
Yeah.
And like the quintessential good Delhi boy.
So, but on a serious note, I think because I didn't have enough say. A lot of things that happened to me, the choices of what I studied in school and then college, my first job option, they were largely dictated by the family, right? And that left me very dissatisfied then and going into the future. And then somewhere I took a call. I said, it is all right, but I can't have my life, I can't stay dissatisfied and unhappy. I need to kind of break the mold. I need to get those around me, like they need to understand that I want to do something different. And if now also they don't understand, then I'm sorry, then there's something not normal in the relationship, right? And that's why I took the steps that I did.
And you were okay with whatever the repercussions were going to be.
Yeah. So the thing is, again, I couldn't say at that time, but somewhere in my mind, because I eventually, took to travel writing and all, but metaphorically, I became a traveler much sooner. Right? Because I started traveling through different experiences, different journeys. So I may not have had a linear path, like you said, and but it also enriched me with different experiences. Yeah, I've not I'm not sitting atop a Fortune 500 company. I've not built a unicorn, but the kind of stories I have, I always say, that at some stage of our lives, right, we're all going to be sitting around on a chair because we're going to be beyond a certain age and everything. And a lot of people are going to be recounting the bank balances, but I could be recounting so many stories that I've lived.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
I actually, maybe it's, to know what is important to yourself personally is a big learning. And do you think you got it at 30 only, or it's been a process? I think
it's been a process, and every step that I took, I didn't know what I was getting into, right? But it was an experiment. And I had only one criteria. I said, look, as long as, financially, I'm keeping myself afloat, right? I'm managing to maintain a certain quality of lifestyle. I don't owe anything to anyone, right? I'm debt free, right? I could actually experiment in life. And that was very important to me. And then, of course, you also take, make sure that your personal health and your relationships at home and everything, they're all normal, because you need that free mind space. So you can't be distracted. So those continue to be my little, check boxes. Don't compromise on those, but then keep experimenting in life.
But, that's also very relative, honestly. Like, how much you need and how much you want. That's completely a different conversation also. But that's also very relative that, what is it? And especially, it's a thing that sometimes I hold against Delhi in some ways, and I feel that everybody's kind of in certain circles only competing and not living the life that they could live, because they're only looking at what the other person is doing and kind of in some way competing with that. So it's a very relative thing that, okay, I need this, I don't need this. So what is the basic criteria that one can keep for that?
So while I can't define the size, because size everybody defines, but I think it's like a curve. You'd go up to a certain level and then you say, okay, I've reached the equilibrium, right? And now I will maintain that, right? I will not go under, I will not go up. I may go up, but I will not go under, and keep it at pace with the cost of living, the inflation and everything. That's economics, right? But relative to the economy, you keep yourself afloat, because beyond a certain point, right? Don't waste your time earning money you will not spend in your lifetime.
Oh, wow.
So, and I still see even now so many friends, colleagues, acquaintances, classmates with whom we were together from class KG onwards when we were 5 years old, and they're like running around, they're like trying to make money, they're well off, they're rich, but they're not paying attention to their health. They're running after money, they are stressed. Like, hello, you've got everything.
Yeah,
right? And especially after your 40s and 50s, there are only so many best decades you have got left of your life. Go and live it. In fact, in a way, I always used to say my peak travels were happening in my 30s and 40s. And I used to say that's when my body allows me to pick up my camera and go anywhere. right? I can sit in a boardroom and run businesses even at 70.
True.
Right? But I can't drive from here to Arunachal by road, right, when I'm 70. It won't be easy. You can, but it won't be easy.
Yeah, but that's also something that you keep learning as you grow older.
Yeah, but you have to keep
you have to have some retrospect.
but the thing is, it's all in the mind. You have to talk to yourself. You have to take a call, right? And especially, like a lot of us come from backgrounds. We've had good schooling. We've had a good education. Our early years are formative years in work. We created a certain value. We'll always be invaluable to somebody. Even if we take a break, we can always come back. Somebody will want our services and pay for it.
Yeah, but then that kind of, how do I say, the insecurity of it. But, you said a very simple thing that to kind of earn enough for your life. Don't earn what you don't need to spend in your lifetime. But then people are, thinking of generations and wealth accumulation.
Well, there's a new school of thought now, which says die with zero.
Which I haven't heard of that.
Which means that whatever you've got, spend it in your lifetime. Right? And I was reading an analysis the other day. It also said that, okay, let's say your net worth is X, right? Progressively spend that X while you still can, right? And by the time your last years are there, you basically spend it. And you say, oh, I'm going to leave it behind for somebody. But given our normal lifespans, that somebody is usually our children. And by the time we pass, our children themselves are 60, 70.
That's true. So they also haven't enjoyed it.
So the thing is, leaving money for them, they would be past their best years. So they will not really enjoy that money.
Yeah, that's true actually.
Yeah. Right. So the thing is, live for yourself, make your children capable. So they have their own lives and they have their own incomes and they have their own financial security. Let them lead their lives, but you live your life. Don't say, okay, I'm going, and because the thing is, let's face it, when you die, no matter what your bank balance is, right, what you're going to remember is what you did with your life. Right? And you don't want regrets at that time. Yeah, we'll regret dying. Everybody will regret dying. But the fact is, okay, since that is not a choice, you have to, then you might as well at least reflect back and okay, while I was here, I had a good time.
True, that's true. So, coming back to your little non-linear journey, when you returned from studying journalism, you said you had a very successful tech blog, and then you gave that up for travel writing. So travel blogging. So what happened at again the some Kida bit?
Well, the thing is, because when I came back, because of my background, because of my degrees,
you had an engineering,
right? So I was overqualified to get conventional journalism jobs. So the only job I could get was as a business journalist, right? I did that for a couple of years. I said, I've learned what I wanted to, but I wanted to do public interest journalism, but there wasn't much scope in that. And then I got into tech writing because as a business writer, I was also covering technology, right? Then I started doing that. And then one day I woke up and said okay, what's the big deal about talking about the latest Nokia phone or a Silverlight software by Microsoft and stuff like that? I said I have to do something more, something where I kind of leave a legacy. And then suddenly one day...
You thought of that. You said, I want to leave a legacy.
Yeah, I want to leave a legacy. And I said, okay, and by then I also said, I want to start writing books. I said, okay, let me do one thing. I love travel. I'm going to start doing travel writing.
Were you traveling a lot any which ways by then, or were you?
I was a casual traveler, like all of us are, right? Take holidays a couple of times a year, right? But I said, okay, I'm going to be a travel writer and largely write about my own country, and talk and first discover it for myself and then help the rest of the world, including Indians themselves, discover their own country for themselves beyond the palaces of Rajasthan, beyond the wellness of Kerala, beyond the beaches of Goa and the cows and the snake charmers and the poverty and everything. There is so much more, I'm sure, was awaiting. And for me, it continued to be a discovery. In fact, the greatest discovery was the city of Delhi itself.
Really?
Yeah, because when I decided to write a book on Delhi.
I've come across that. You've written a book.
Yeah, it's called Delhi 101 and 101 experiences you can have in Delhi. Most Delhiites themselves don't know about that.
Really? So what are the kind of experiences you mentioned in the book?
Well, they're like small and big experiences. They're like little monuments here and there. They're little eating places. There's and there's some kind of controversial stuff. There are like at least 2 places where they said these are the graves of Razia Sultan, right? And there's a history, there's a culture behind everything, whether it's in Old Delhi, whether it's in South Delhi, wherever it is. There's in fact, people don't realize the yellow metro line, which goes from Gurgaon to Delhi University, it's 1,000 years of history on that one line.
I've done a lot of research on the metro, so I know that. But why don't you share what kind of research?
Because all the 7 cities you talk about of Delhi, right, they're all along that line. Maximum, okay, you have to take a little diversion maybe for Tughlakabad, right? But all of Delhi's history is along that one single line. You can actually have a tourist circuit just going up and down that line. How many people realize that?
You should do an update on that. How long ago was this book published?
So this book came out, I think, about 8 years ago, and an update is due.
Yeah, you must do an update.
So in fact,
Delhi in the last 8 years has changed a lot and has many lovely additions to it.
Yeah, and most of my writing is something which is kind of timeless. So you will not, a new restaurant might open in Ormondo Market. I may not write about that because it may not exist 3 years later. Right, but something which has stood the test of time, like the Jalebi Wala in Chandni Chowk, right? That family has been there for generations, and they're not going anywhere in a hurry, right? So I would write about them.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, how did what we know as the space which became the KUNZUM Travel Cafe? How did that start? Was that a creative bug, or was that an entrepreneurial bug that happened to? Which step was it? Creative or entrepreneurial or both?
Okay, so there's a little backstory to that. So 2007, when I woke up one day and I said I'm going to be a travel writer, and that was also a time when I was actually at crossroads in life, both personal and professional. And the reason why I took to travel writing is because I felt I was going nowhere in life. So I decided.
And how old were you at this time?
At that time, I was 37, right? So I felt I was going nowhere in life. So what's the alternative? Let's go everywhere in life, right? So I sat in the car. I said my first trip was to Spiti as a travel writer. And so I reached Manali, spent the night there. Next day, I headed towards Spiti. And when I was driving, I thought I'd literally lost my way because there were no road signs, there were no roads. I was just driving blindly. There was not a single human being that I saw for hours, right? And there was a steep hill that came. I kept climbing on that, and suddenly I came upon a plateau. I was actually scared. I said, this is how people get lost.
And you were alone.
I was alone, and there are no mobile signals, nothing, right? And then suddenly when I reached a plateau, right? And there I saw some Buddhist flags fluttering at a shrine. And there I saw a signboard which was pointing to a place called Kaza. So in that, and I stood there, I said, it's the most stunning spot I've ever stood on in my life. It was over 14,000 feet above sea level, and pristine, clear skies, just mountain peaks around me, cold, windy. And so in that moment, when I saw the signboard to Kaza, I found my direction to where I was headed for that day. I said, okay, I'm not lost today. But I also found my direction in life. That was validation that I really want to discover India for myself. I said, if on the second day of my life as a travel writer, I'm standing at this stunning spot, imagine what else awaits. That spot I was standing on is called the KUNZUM Pass. Right? So I came back, I called my blog KUNZUM.com. Right? And then in 2009, I acquired this place in Hoskas village to set up as a gallery for my photography. And I called it the KUNZUM Gallery. And on day...
You own this or you...
I owned this, right? And on day one, I sold a print for 15,000. I said, wow, so exciting. For the next 1 year, I didn't sell a single print. Right? I said, kya kare? Like, what do I do now? And then I was sitting with some friends and we came upon this idea. I said, look, the walls already have the photographs and my books, right? Let's put some, seating and all on the floor, and rebrand this place as the KUNZUM Travel Cafe. We'll serve tea, coffee, and cookies, where we'll say people pay what they like. We will not give them a bill, right? We put a box there, and we started inviting people. And
how did you reach out to people?
So we just did some shout outs on Facebook and all, and lo and behold, people just it just became an overnight kind of a sensation, right? For want of a better word. And people started coming in and they started talking about, free coffee. I said, no, it's not free coffee. You pay what you like. And then somebody came and did
That's a thin line, huh?
Yeah. So, and then somebody came and said, can I do a poetry open mic here? I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. And before we knew it, the place took a life of its own. And people were coming and doing all kinds of events. And in that tiny 500 square feet space with one employee, we were doing 100 events a year.
And would you charge for these events?
So if we used to say, if you have the money, you pay us. If you don't have the money, have the event anyway. And that's how we didn't become a community, but we became a community of communities. And that's how the brand KUNZUM was created.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I kind of, it's for me, KUNZUM has been so synonymous with Delhi because I just find it embodies the same values. There's an openness, there's a little bit of refuge, and it just accepting of everyone who comes and takes almost everybody in this little tiny place. So now this, and in the one place it worked, and then you went on to build two. I mean, and this is post COVID, correct?
No.
That when the bookstore, KUNZUM has become a full-fledged bookstore. Can I call it a business? Because and this is post COVID, when everybody was predicting the death of the physical book per se, and of course that bookstores would end. And in fact, actually we saw that the reverse happened, but now we can say that in retrospect. But you actually went on to open a bookstore at that time. What were you thinking?
So again, it didn't happen overnight, right? So even before the pandemic, right, I'd said that, okay, I've done enough of travel writing and I want to do something else. Let's do something different now, right? I'd been doing full-time travel writing for...
Now, this is what age are we at? We are in the 40s now?
Yeah, we are like, I'm closing around 50.
No, at that time when you started.
When I started, it was 37.
That was a travel writing.
Yeah. So, and that's why the KUNZUM Travel Cafe was running. Everything was fine. And when I was approaching 50, I said, I need to do something else. Okay. And I was wondering, what do I do with the future of the KUNZUM Travel Cafe? And then the lockdown happened. So for over a year and a half, all of us were just staring at the wall, sitting at home, reflecting upon life and everything, all that stuff. And then it struck me. I said, look, I already know how to build a face-to-face community called the KUNZUM Travel Cafe, right? I'm an author who's also looking for outlets to sell his books, right? I said, let's take the idea of KUNZUM Travel Cafe, right, and build a bookstore around it, right? And I said, so we'll get that, we'll retain that social component, we'll retain that community component, but also bring in books, right? And although I promised myself at that stage, I will not run any more ventures. I'll stay like a lone ranger, focus on my writing and stuff like that. But once the bug got to me, I said, I need to do this. Right. And then almost overnight, I got the ball rolling. And the ball got rolling on the eve of the Omicron wave. And just when I acquired the properties, the Omicron wave came, and I said, have I made a mistake? But we persisted.
So you bought the properties?
Yeah. So I bought the properties.
But you decided not one, but two. Am I right?
No, 5.
Okay, 5. All right.
So
we decided to go with 5.
Yeah. So we opened the business on day 1. We had 5 stores.
But why 5? Like, why more than one?
I just wanted to create a scale. I want to triangulate the city. Like Central Delhi, South Delhi, Gurgaon to start with. I said, like, let's have a bookstore within a few miles of everybody. Right? So we opened 5 bookstores on day 1. And that's how we pivoted from me, the travel writer, KUNZUM Travel Cafe, the community place, into KUNZUM Books, which is a chain of bookstores.
This again, I mean, from somebody who's a little bit in the creative space and a little bit in the entrepreneurial space, it's very challenging to balance, finances with creative entrepreneurship. So any challenging moments which came besides, of course, the first, which was the core, as soon as you started, have you been able to navigate or faced anything which has kind of upset the plans a little bit?
Well, it's not upset the plans. And so we've had a mixed experience. There were certain revenue streams we were expecting that didn't come in. But then other revenue streams kind of opened up. I would say we are still in a kind of a gestation period because we haven't even completed 2 years. And our competitors are either players like Amazon, right, who've been there in the business for over 25 years.
That's a completely different
level, right? Or there are other bookstores which are legacy bookstores in the city. But let's not forget, all those bookstores are over 50 years old, most of them. Right? And we are not even 2 years.
70 now, many of
them. Yeah, one of them has crossed 70, right? And so we are still trying to build the brand, the footfalls, and we've got many more ideas. But again, what we are trying to build here is, while we say we retail books, but we don't say we are a retailer of books, because we're also trying to build a culture around what we are doing. right? And that is, so basically we are scaling up what we used to do at the KUNZUM Travel Cafe. All our spaces are designed to host events, not just literary events, but we do theater, we do stand-up comics, we do films, we do live music, we do talks, discussions, debates, we do all kinds of stuff.
And then again, how does this work? Again, there are set rates or, a cost to this, or people can still continue the mission?
So again, we do it on a case-to-case basis, where we feel that it needs to be done, it should be done, but there's no budget. We say take the space anyway, right? If a group of young people come and say we want to do an open mic, right? For the sake of promoting their creative interest, we'll say, okay, take the space. But if a brand comes and says, okay, we want to do a certain kind of an event, we say, okay, you have the budget, why don't you pay us, right? There are artists who come, we maybe divide the gate money. We also say that, okay, if the gate money wasn't enough, you can keep all of it, no problem, because, you need your bare minimum at least. So we have a very kind of an open and a very flexible model.
And that works.
That works, because again, that's how, see, otherwise what happens is every space you go to, right, there's like a price tag to it. Right? While they do give the space for certain kind of events for free, but whether you go to a Habitat, IIC, you go to any hotels, you go to the Shriram Center, everybody has a rate card. Right? But if you want to do something which is like a little more free-flowing, experimental, you may or may not have the budgets, right? So many people come to us and record their podcast at KUNZUM. Right? And because they find the space suitable, we said, no problem. Like, what do we charge you? Okay, use our space as long as you're not disturbing our guests. So we like.
But then, how does this actually help the business?
Well, like I told the team the new team that I hired for the KUNZUM bookstores, I said, look, if we had launched this same business exactly the same way and called it a brand ABC, or we're calling it KUNZUM, the legacy that was in Delhi since 2010. Right? I said, and that legacy, that brand got created because of a certain philosophical approach to how to create public spaces. Right? And we continue with that because that's what made brand KUNZUM. In fact, many of our friends and people who loved the brand, they started calling themselves KUNZUM Walas.
Oh, how lovely.
Right? I said, look, if that is what KUNZUM was built on, let's not disturb that spirit, no? Right? It's like, to give a rough analogy, right? When Coke changed their formula, right? Sales tanked, right? They had to go back to the Coke Classic, right? When you got something going for you, when you are representative of a certain kind of an ethos, a certain culture, a certain philosophy, a certain way of thinking, at least don't change that. The commerce you can still make up by being a little more aggressive in selling books. You can do more events. You can get sponsors in. You can make up for there. But don't lose that essence for what brand KUNZUM was known for.
So, most bookstores are actually built around the concept. A community is very strong with every bookstore, and that is the case with you. There is a community. But besides the space that you provide for an event, how does his KUNZUM different from other bookstores which are already there in Delhi?
Well, one is the design element itself. Right, we made sure that the spaces are well lit, the aisles are easy to browse.
I think just the sheer space.
Yeah, so the curation is so important for us, right? And we don't want books, kind of falling on you. We've created spaces for people to sit, browse through the books, have a coffee. We don't charge for the coffee.
That still continues.
That coffee is on the house, but with a rider. That you will be served coffee on the house when you buy a book, but you can't pay for the coffee separately. Right? We don't offer Wi-Fi anymore, right? We don't encourage use of laptops. We say for that, you can go to the Blue Tokais and the Third Wave coffees and sit there, but don't use our space as a co-working space. This is a space for books. We make sure that we don't sell teddy bears, we don't sell croissants, we don't sell stationery, because we want to use every square inch available to place books. Because there's so many books we still can't bring into the store. There are millions of books out there and such wonderful books, but we can only do so much. Right? And that's how we are kind of trying to be different, because the design element, the whole culture, there are no entry barriers. You come, you relax, you feel relaxed, that whole vibe. Otherwise, most bookstores, right? After you've done the transaction, there's nothing to do. Now, some bookstores have built like a coffee shop inside, so you can go and sit in a coffee shop, right? But really, that's not integral to the bookstore. In our case, you're in the bookstore, everything is there, and that's how we're trying to be different.
Yeah, it's lovely. This entrepreneurship is often a very lonely journey.
Yeah.
The hits, the misses, I would rather say, outweigh the hits. And Kunzum was also not initially a success, but I kind of feel this community, like you were saying, the Kunzum walas who
Yeah.
kind of developed, have really kind of pushed it to keep it going. Do you draw a lot of strength from the community? I'm sure you do.
I think they are a power.
Yeah.
Right? Because the way they talk to us, the way they show the love, the way they show that affinity, right? It's money can't buy, right? So that very simply.
True. That's. In fact, I went to one of your stores the other day, and it was very nice to see a lot of youngsters coming in, and it was around 8 at night. But in front of me, a lot of them. So I really hope that having a space also encourages the love for books, and people actually are buying physical copies.
Yeah. So the thing is, one, we aid discovery of books. Number one. Number two, when we do these events, a lot of people who come, right, they come with like +1, +2, +3. So the main person who's coming, they might be interested in books, but the others are just kind of tagging along. And we've seen they get drawn into the whole spirit of things, and we've seen non-readers getting converted to readers. Right. So that's again something which is kind of a little magical, and we love that. But
we've been talking about entrepreneurship for such a long for some time. And do you even like that word? Because entrepreneurship is so planned, like step 1, step 2, step 2, do this, do that. But I've known you for a long time, and I don't know whether do you look at yourself more as an entrepreneur or more as a creative person, or now at this point in your life?
But what you said earlier, that's the phrase I use often, and I've never heard anyone say that, is what you said, creative entrepreneurship. Right. And in a way, it can, from a purely numbers point of view, it can be a little oxymoronish. Right. But I think so. I think it's in a way, yeah, it's for profit, but it's for a cause, for a reason. And in fact, I'm writing a book, and only yesterday, as part of that book, I was writing that I don't keep things straightforward. When I took to travel writing, I said, okay, through my writings, if I can help people discover India, right, that's my altruism or my motivation. And likewise, for me to set up these bookstores, the motivation is to get more people to read. In fact, just a few days ago, we launched this new campaign called Time to Read. The whole idea is to get stakeholders together to expand readership in society. Because only then, when more and more of us are reading, right, it's good for business, of course, but it's also good for us as a society. Right? Because I think reading is so important to start looking at life from different vantage points. Right? And that is something that your social media feeds and your mass media are not going to give. Right? It's a dialogue we're not having in our classrooms. It's a dialogue we're not having in our homes. Right? There's so many things that disturb us. This only yesterday I was talking to my team, like they're mostly young people. I said, what is it that's causing so many mental health issues amongst young people? Right? And they say they didn't have a clear answer. They said there are many reasons, but one of the reasons is they said that when we are online, we see so much distress around wars happening and stuff like that. That disturbs us. And I said that's the reason why you should be away from your gadgets. I said, look, wars have always been a part of our history. In fact, we are probably overall, the most peaceful era is now. If you look back in history, there was much more conflict than now. But you're getting affected more because you're seeing it more. Right? All the more reason, put your gadgets away, put all these feeds away. In fact, one of the authors we interviewed, he says, reading and books are the antidote to propaganda. Right? And so for me, yeah, it's a venture for profit, but that's not the only driver. Obviously, I was making money somewhere to be able to have invested in these bookstores, and I was making money more easily than what I'm going to be making through bookstores. But so I could have continued with that if money was the only motivation.
So have you taken a big risk is everything has been put into the bookstore?
Well, like I said, I'm a little prudent in my financial matters. What I said earlier, that make sure that you don't sink. So I would say, okay, I am going to allocate X amount of or X percentage of my net worth to the business, right? But I will not go below that.
So now are you on a rental model or do you own all these?
No, I own all the properties.
Okay.
Right. And so for me, I will not take a risk beyond a point. If it becomes unsustainable financially, it's not that I will keep putting money into it. I will not go into debt. I will not borrow money. Right. I will not, stake my house and my, my quality of life for this. But I don't think it's going to come to that because we're on the right track. And if things continue the way they are, I think we're going to be comfortably profitable within a year or so.
But we were talking, you just mentioned a team. And in fact, you and me have had this discussion in the past that how do you get a team to buy into your vision? And, kind of look at something like it's your vision and you need people to buy into it because you can't do everything alone.
Yeah.
And, there has to be a sense of ownership which others get. How have you able to manage that a little bit now? Do you have a good team?
Well, I hope they aren't listening right now. But
I hope they're all listening and tune in. No, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
We also talk about it, that you have to have a buy-in and a sense of ownership which the team has to have.
So I would say that I've been fortunate that my core team, a good part of the team is, very solidly in place. They're doing a good job. They know their job and they're actually holding everything together. And there's a small percentage which is a little fluid. Right. But we are trying to build stability there also by kind of not making the hiring mistakes that we made in the past. We've still made mistakes, even as recently as yesterday. But but also defining their roles very clearly, right? Making sure that they get the right support to deliver what we want, and also having clarity now on minds as to what we expect from them. Right?
Because there is so much of it when it's led by one person is inside your own head.
Yeah.
And we've had these conversations that, we're not getting this and we're not being able to get the team to this.
And what also happens is when it's
you've been able to put it out.
What also happens is when it's an ideas business, right? You're coming up with new ideas all the time. In your mind, okay, you might say, okay, I was thinking of this yesterday, but I'll drop this and do this.
Yeah.
But the team gets confused. But yesterday you told me to do this event and now suddenly you're saying, forget that event, do something else. Like, what am I supposed to do? Right? Yeah. But so they have to understand that we are also, KUNZUM is an idea in progress. Most of the things we are doing are new, right? Who serves coffee complimentary? Just as one example, who creates a bookstore where you can have like a live music session, right? So there's so many things we're doing differently. And obviously, there are going to be hits and misses. Some things are going to work, some are not going to work. We are realizing that some things take up so much of our effort, but the rewards are not worth it for putting that effort. So let's put our time into something else, right?
But this constantly shifting gear is, do you find it daunting or exciting?
Well, sometimes you shift gears because you expect the team to be delivering in a certain way and they don't deliver. Then you said, okay, this product is not working, right? If you have a certain kind of a program for children, for example, it requires a certain way of handling, the way of marketing, the way of programming it. But if you're not able to get those people to do that for you, then you say, okay, drop it because let's do something else for the children.
Yeah, true.
So there's so sometimes it's, you change things because you change the idea, and sometimes you change things because you couldn't find the right person to do it for you.
And as a space now, which one? Where are you getting the maximum number of people from Delhi to come to the KUNZUM Cafe? You said you marked kind of.
Yeah, actually, what happened?
Village, I know. Hostka still remains.
Yeah.
And then where else?
So we are in Vasant Vihar, Jorbagh, and in Gurgaon. But our Greater Kailash 2 outlet has become
the flagship.
It's become the flagship, and that didn't actually happen on day one. On day one, when we opened the store, it was just one level. And a few months down the line, there was an opportunity to acquire the remaining 3 floors above us. Right, and the tenants over there were actually creating a mess of the building. So we took those floors, we added another floor of books, and we added 2 floors of what we call Theatre KUNZUM. These are 120 plus seaters where we do events. So initially we thought, okay, one of the floors will dedicate to an eatery and all, but then we also realized that there are enough eateries and coffee shops in town, including in the market we are in, right? But there aren't enough theaters, there aren't enough spaces for events. right? So we built 2 floors, which are only event spaces, fully equipped with all kinds of audio visual equipment, and 2 floors are entirely books. So because of that size and because of so much more that we do there, there's a skew in GK2 towards higher sales and higher footfalls.
Achha. And also the market is kind of coming up with a lot of
so
I think the eateries are
ironically GK2 was an afterthought, because I was looking at GK1, I was looking at Defense Colony, I was looking at other South Delhi areas, because Vasant Vihar we had covered one side, so this side I was looking at something else, and ironically I went to meet another bookshop owner in GK2 for something, and when I was coming down, I suddenly saw like a lot of like vacant buildings, and I made a few calls, and I realized, okay, they're coming at a good rate nowadays. So I picked it up. So GK2 was actually an afterthought, but it's become a flagship.
Yeah, no, it's. I told you I should go there, and it's a very nice place. And so now, what are the future plans? Like, how do you? I mean, is there you want to stabilize this kind of the KUNZUM as it is as a community space, or?
So I think one thing I'm sure about is I don't want to scale up for the scale of scaling up. Right, I want to make sure that even if we scale up, whether we scale up to 1 more store or 20 other stores, we'll let it happen organically. It has to happen in a certain way that we enjoy the business. See, because personally, I don't want to be like just sitting in the boardroom with financiers and administrators and bankers and VCs and all that stuff, because I want to stay on the creative side of things, right? But what we definitely want to do is scale up access to readers and sell books too. And we can do that through institutional sales. We are reaching out to corporates, we're reaching out to schools, even individuals. We are building a lot of programs like gifting programs, book subscriptions. So that is something we can service even online or virtually or going to people's offices. So that's the part we want to scale up, but not necessarily the physical infrastructure. But
then are you also, and there are no plans of going outside Delhi?
Well, like I said, if, setting up stores outside Delhi is going to kind of initially in the like the blueprint, we wanted to be all over India. But then after set up these stores, I realized that replicating this culture that we've created will not be easy.
Yeah, Delhi, I mean, the culture of Delhi itself is, I think...
Yeah, and I think even from a people management point of view, because I'm personally there, I can supervise 5 stores, although it's a challenge even 5 stores within Delhi. But imagine like having stores in Bangalore, Chennai, Coimbatore. See, because if you're building a certain brand in Delhi and people know you for that, and just because you're in Bangalore or Coimbatore and you're dependent on third parties or employees, and they're not able to replicate that same culture, then people say, but we read Delhi was like this, but Bangalore has disappointed us.
Yeah, you don't want
so I don't want the brand to be diluted. And I think there are enough iconic brands worldwide which are single stores or just a few stores, and they've done fine for themselves. Even in the book space, you've got Shakespeare and Company in Paris, you've got the Eliot Bay in Seattle, you've got Daunt Books in London, right? So you've got these little single stores or little small chains, and I think and they're doing well for themselves.
You know, it's how amazing is it, Ajay, that you started off as wanting to discover tourist places and beautiful places outside Delhi, and now KUNZUM is itself a landmark where a lot of people who come to Delhi, they want to. The KUNZUM is a point. That's such a lovely journey to have. And thank you so much for being on Delhi Love, Ishq Mohabbat Pyar. That's the name of the podcast. What I really love, besides that you've created these spaces, these bookstores, is the community that has kind of developed, and we that's I think that's what we need today, are these safe spaces, and where people can come together, have conversations, and that's essentially what we're also trying to do in the podcast, that have a space for conversations. You offer coffee, that's like the plus one you have on this. But thank you so much.
No, but thank you for having me over. It was a lovely conversation, and while conversing with you, it's also like a reflection for me. So I'm going to go back with some fresh thought that I didn't have earlier.
Great. And then we'll have one more conversation over coffee.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the Delhi Love, we speak to people from Delhi who have stories to share. Stories of those who are invested in the city. We help build communities and open conversations that make Delhi more accessible, welcoming, and adventurous. Join us next time as we explore Delhi's hidden gems, people, places, and stories on Delhi Love, Ishq Mohabbat Pyar. I'm Yasmin Kidwai. Until next time.